It's a 2023-2024 season preview of the Atlanta Hawks, next on The Dime.
You are now listening to The Dime with Josh and Quab, your go-to NBA podcast. Subscribe on Apple, follow on Spotify, and be sure to hit up the YouTube channel for video content. And now your hosts, Josh and Quab.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Dime season preview edition. Today we're doing the Atlanta Hawks, and if they could turn back to their Eastern Conference Championship form. And what better way to discuss this than with the man who created Hawks Fan TV and who is a Knicks Twitter villain. Everybody, please welcome back to the show, Alex Chung. Alex, how's it going, man?
Appreciate you having me, guy. Yeah, it's going good, man. Just been busy, waiting for this offseason to get finished, and that way I can watch my Hawks kick some ass. So I'm excited, looking forward to it. And yeah, I'm super excited, super pumped about the season.
Yeah, shout out to you, man. I mean, you started a movement in ATL for sure. I mean, to me, you're the most influential Hawks Twitter account for my money, right? I don't think anyone else has more influence on Hawks Twitter than you do. I mean, you're breaking news at this point. You're on radio. So shout out to you, man. You're doing the damn thing. And Knicks Twitter hates you, and because Knicks Twitter hates you, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Knicks. Hey, despite all of the beef, I still got love for my Knicks fans. Shout out to Sean and Sed and those guys over there.
Yeah, they're good dudes. They're good dudes for sure. All right, so let's get into it. Before we preview the 2023-2024 season, though, I want to recap the 2022-2023 season. And I found this tweet of yours that I found very interesting, and I wanted you to elaborate on it. And it is, you said, if we had Quin Synder at the start of the season, we'd be a top 4 seed. Trae Young would be an MVP candidate. And then you went on to say, I still have faith this team can turn things around in the last 12 games. So this was after 70 games. And you said a 6-7 seed are still possible. They got the 7 seed. Let's go, Hawks Nation. Now, for people who haven't watched the Atlanta Hawks, I wouldn't say they would think you're crazy, but they finished 41-41. There was a time there where they was like, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, like for like a month and a half, right? Something like that. So what is it about Quin Synder that you think could have brought him out of that mediocrity?
Yeah, Quin's a great coach, man. He's done some special things in Utah. He's gotten the number 1 seed in the West back when it was actually good. And he's made some deep playoff runs. Unfortunately, whenever you have one of your star players as Rudy Gobert, you're most likely not going to make it that far in the playoffs, regardless of how good of a coach you are. But I think this is probably the most talented team that Quin Synder has ever had in his career. He runs a great offense. He's been first. His team has been like first in 3-point shots made, very high tempo offense, and it's very free flowing basketball, right? The big problem with the Hawks with the previous regime, aka Nate McMillan and Lloyd Pierce, they played a very outdated form of basketball, especially Nate McMillan. He would try to hunt mismatches and try to play a lot more half court setting basketball. And Quin Synder is more run and gun, like more modern Golden State Warriors type of offense. And with the players that we have and the style of play that those players play their strengths to, I think that's going to bring the most out of this team. And he's really good at relationship building and what's the word I'm looking for? He's just good at building relationships. So a lot of the previous 2 coaches that we had, Trae and John Collins, Clint Capella, these Hawks players have voiced their concerns about Lloyd Pierce, who got fired, Nate McMillan, who got fired. There's a big misconception that Trae Young was the only person that got fired, and honestly, that's shout out to Trae. If you guys think Trae has that much pull in this front office that he's the only guy that has to say one thing and a coach gets fired, that's a superstar to me, in my opinion. But unfortunately, it wasn't just Trae. It was a good majority of the team. And now we got Quin, and Trae has already voiced his opinion that this is the best coach he's ever had, he's worked with, and we're all excited, man. The guys really seem to like him.
Yeah, and you also mentioned this tweet, Trae Young would be an MVP candidate. So what did you see the difference between Trae with Nate and Trae with Quin?
Confidence, man. Like Quin has told on record to the media and Trae, look, I believe in you, I trust in you. I think with Nate and Lloyd Pierce, they were kind of under his under a microscope, because obviously Trae has somewhat of a reputation to take some quote unquote ill-advised shots. And I think when you look at his previous seasons, especially that ECF run, Trae was playing at an all-NBA level, right? That was the year he made all-NBA team. And then Nate McMillan kind of restructured his play style in that offseason, which led to some poor follow-up seasons. But Quin trusts Trae, and Trae has also improved tremendously on the defensive end of the ball. Like, there's a big joke, as you guys know, on Twitter and just like in the media that Trae Young's like this worst defender in the league.
Yeah.
And it's simply not true, right? There's metrics that prove he's not the worst defender, not even like close to as the worst defender. Like Tyrese Halliburton, Darius Garland, they're all worst defenders. Maybe not Darius Garland, but like by metrics, Tyrese Halliburton, John Morant's a worse defender on paper than Trae. So when you saw Quin come in, Trae's been playing the best defense I've ever seen him play ever since he's come to Atlanta. So I think that, coupled with better shot selection and just more swagger from Trae on the offensive end, I think you'll see, 30 and 10 type of numbers along with competent defense, right? He's not going to be like an all-world defender. He's not going to shut down anyone, but he can at least be competent. And that whole narrative around, you just have to attract Trae and like you can't hide him on defense is just, it's false.
Yeah, and I assume a lot of that confidence with them being a top 4 seed in your mind had to do with the trade for Dejounte Murray and that backcourt tandem. Can you just give me a letter grade of what Trae and Dejounte were to you, just as a backcourt?
Just as a backcourt, I'd give it a B-. B-
Okay.
Simply for the fact that Nate McMillan was not the right type of coach to propel Trae and Dejounte into their like final form. I think with Quin, I think you're going to see a lot more off-ball movement. I think you're going to see a lot more just continuity between those two. And even in their first year, right, with a very short offseason and not a whole lot of time to gel, they were still one of 3 backcourts in the entire league to both average 20-plus points a game. So yeah, Trae and DJ, with all things considered, with all the drama, the coach getting fired, halfway into the season, they did pretty well. But I think it's going to go from a B- this past season to like an A- come next season.
So, in your opinion, what do you think the team's ceiling should be next season, and what do you think the floor should be with Quin Synder?
I think the floor is like a 6-7 seed. I think if everything goes poorly and wrong, and everything that could go wrong does go wrong, they could be like a 6-7 seed. But if everything goes right, I could see us right there in like a top 4 seed, man. Like, I think in the Eastern Conference, you have like your kind of 2 clear-cut teams, which would be Milwaukee and Boston, in my opinion. I think that's your tier 1 fighting for your first and second seeds. Look, I know Philly does well in the regular season, but I think James Harden's leaving soon, and they got some drama with Joel Embiid possibly requesting a trade. I don't see them doing that well. They got a brand new coach. So it's going to be like Philly, Miami, Atlanta, Cleveland.
Josh's face when you said Miami already. He already was like, ah.
Yeah, we'll see. But and who knows? Miami could be, again, they could be like a playing team and just make another run in the postseason because they do have some hoopers that turn it on in the second half. But yeah, I mean, with all that considered, I think the Hawks right there in that tier 2 team lead or tier, and they could be anywhere from like 3 to 4 or 5.
All right, now I want to talk to you about roster construction a little bit. There's been trade rumors with Clint Capella. Obviously, you traded away John Collins for Rudy Gay and some picks. Let's talk about that one first, actually. John Collins' era is over, man. The rumors were every year John Collins is going to be traded. John Collins is going to be traded.
From your perspective, as a Hawks fan, because this is your team, you watch it, right? What was I guess I don't want to say the beef, but what was the issue when it came to John Collins? Because I felt like there was the year when you guys made that run, when you beat the Sixers and made that, like, he was a big factor in that. And ever since after that, every offseason coming closer to the trade deadline, you hear John Collins is on the trading block. John Collins is on the trading block. And I wondered, what was the Hawks fans' perspective when it comes to John Collins?
So it's tough for me because from a personal standpoint, I think JC is one of like the greatest guys that we've had on this team ever. Really likable personality, really cool dude, really down to earth, humble, and if you talk to him during interviews, like, he's the most articulate and like the best interviewer on the team, and he's just a really cool guy. So for that reason, I love John Collins, right? And I wish him nothing but the best. Good luck in Utah. From a basketball perspective, though, the dude, he's going into like his 6th or 7th year now at this point. He still has 0 handles. His 3-point shot has been very respectable up until this past season, where he shot like 32% from 3. And so his 3-point shot fell, but like the main thing is he cannot create his own shot. Like, he is a 6'10" athletic power forward who cannot play his back to the basket. I've seen this man try to post up like, Drew Holiday and Darius Garland, and he fails, in the post. So a lot of his points do come from a lot of, assists from Trae Young, Dejounte Murray, and hitting some open 3-pointers that Trae and DJ create for the team. But when you need him to score a bucket, he is not a reliable, consistent enough player to just get you a bucket. On top of that, his like one-on-one on-ball defense isn't that good. It improved last year, but he's not that good of a defender, and he's kind of like in that weird situation where he's not quick enough and like laterally quick enough to be a 3, so he can't really guard wings on the perimeter, and he's not strong enough to like guard bigger 4s and 5s down low in the post. So he's a great help side defender, gets a lot of blocks coming from the weak side, but yeah, with all things considered, it was his time to go. I don't think he meshes with the team with what we're looking for. I think Quin Synder and Landry Fields is looking for more versatile type of players that can do more than just one thing. Because at the end of the day, JC is just a lob specialist, right? Like, no offense to JC, but most of his points come from alley-oops and offensive rebounds, and he's just cleaning them up. He had, a lot of fans like to point back to his, 20 and 10 season where he was averaging 21 points and 10 rebounds. That was the year he was on PEDs, ladies and gentlemen. That was the year that he got suspended for 25 games. Hey,
Drugs.
That's just the truth. That's just the truth.
It is what it is.
Man, so he was on that ish. That's why.
Yeah. And then, the following seasons, he hasn't had a season remotely close to that 21 and 10 season. He finished like 17 and like 9 the following year, but it wasn't all that special. So, again, all this to say, I love him, great guy. I wish him the best. It was just his time to go in Atlanta, at least.
Were you disappointed at least, like in the package you got back? I mean, when I read the tweet, I was like, that's it.
You were cool with that?
Disappointed in that?
I would.
Yes, sir.
Wait, I've been like every John Collins trade rumor I've heard. I just expected more. Maybe again, this is from the outside looking in from our perspective. We just expected like just something else. I remember the trade came through. Me and Josh were like, okay, what else?
No, look. When you look at it from like a face value in a vacuum, it was a bad trade, right? Like, obviously, John Collins at this point of his career is way better than a geriatric Rudy Gay, and I'm pretty sure that's all we got. And then like a future like 2nd round pick or something like that. But JC's contract was so horrible that it was pretty much a salary dump. So in my eyes, we got off his bad contract, freed up some cap space, and now that gives us a lot more flexibility to do what we need to do from a roster construction standpoint. Because, yes, in a vacuum, JC for Rudy Gay, terrible. But when you factor in what else we can get because we freed up that money, I think it's going to balance out. And more so, it's actually going to tip in favor of it was a good trade because of the following moves that we're going to be able to make. So I'm happy with it. It was a slip up on Travis Schlenk because he, extended JC and gave him that big contract. It was like 5 years, 120 or 125 million. So he was still owed a lot of money. He still had like 3 years left on his deal. And we waited and waited. Unfortunately, because we waited so long, we didn't get as much value, and we got what we did. But it was a win-win no matter what.
So right now, Clint Capella's name has been tossed around in trade rumors. Where do you stand on that? Would you like to keep him? Would you like to see him shipped away for something else?
Oh, man. This question has been dividing Hawks fans like a month, right? Because, Clint Capella's a great player. He is kind of one of the staples of our defense. Even with his age being 30, he's still an elite rim protector, still an elite rebounder, and he's still a really great paint finisher. If you get him, throwing up alley-oops and stuff, he can finish. But we also have an individual by the name of Onyeka Okongwu, who we drafted 6th overall.
I love him,
a few years ago. And at some point, you kind of have to realize, is he ready to start? He's shown a lot of great flashes. I've seen him shut down Giannis Antetokounmpo in the playoffs. I've seen him shut down Joel Embiid and give him fits. He's a really, really good player. And going into his last year of his rookie contract, you can't have him riding the bench because we need to see what he's capable of actually playing full starter minutes. And in my opinion, I think it is time for Clint to get traded. That also, again, gives us a lot more cap flexibility because we get off his books, and that'll give us room to extend players like Onyeka, extend players like Saddiq Bey if we needed to, etc. So I'm excited for Onyeka. I think he's ready. I think he's a more offensively versatile player than Clint Capella. He can actually shoot outside of 3 feet from the paint. And he's a better, more versatile defender because I've seen Onyeka can guard pretty much 1 through 5 in this league. I've seen him guard point guards. I've seen him guard shooting guards on the perimeter, and he's quick enough and athletic enough to move it. He reminds me of Bam Adebayo, to be honest. So, yeah, I mean, I'm ready for him to get traded, and especially if that nets us, a particular player in Toronto, that I'm all for it.
I know. That's been, we talked about that earlier. That player is Pascal. Do you think a player like Pascal can take the Hawks over the top?
Yes.
1 and 2. Do you think Toronto is actually going to trade him because their asking price for their players has always been so ridiculous because they feel like they need to win at every trade, regardless if it's like OG or Pascal or even if it was like Fred VanVleet. They didn't want to trade him. They just ended up letting him walk. So do you think that's a trade that could happen? And if it does happen, do you think that gets you guys right over the top?
Yeah, I think I'll answer the first part. I think if we get Pascal Siakam, I think that puts us clear favorites for like a top 3 seed. Okay. Because when you look at the landscape in the East, what other team has not 1 but 2 All-NBA type of players, 3 All-Star players, and a really solid supporting, bench pieces that can help the team. Trae and DJ are already, in my opinion, the best backcourt in the East, right? As far as just point guard and shooting guard, Trae and DJ are the most talented, most dynamic backcourt in the East. I don't want to hear that nonsense about like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
That was gonna be the one. That was gonna be the one.
Actually, I'll give him a little bit more respect than that. I will say it's close, but I think Trae is the best player out of those 4, and then Donovan Mitchell would be 2, and then Dejounte would be 3. So when you weigh out, who has the 2 of the top, 3 players out of the 4, it's the Hawks. So, and by that logic, I would have to go with Atlanta being the better
debatable. Okay.
Yeah, debatable. But that's my personal opinion. Okay. And then then you added a dynamic, a really good 2-way player in Pascal Siakam. Trae, like in this Trae Young era, we've never had a big man that has Pascal's skill set. He can create his own shot. He can create his own off the dribble. He can beat his man off the dribble. He can pass. He can play make. The man averaged 8 assists last year and playing 40 minutes a game, being ran down by the Canadian Tom Thibodeau, playing their guys 40 minutes a night. So even with that workload, playing 40 minutes every single night at the NBA level, this man was still able to produce 23 plus points a game, 8 assists a game. I think he had 7 rebounds per game, and all while playing really good defense. So yeah, when you add a player like that, I think that opens up the floor for Trae and DJ to do more things because now you have a reliable, proven player that can actually create his own shot, but not only do that, create shots for other teammates. So I think with that, the Hawks are going to be in the driver's seat for a top 3 seed in the East for sure.
So for me personally, I remember when Murray got traded to the Hawks. You and I actually had I won't say debate, but we had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter when that happened. And I was like, I don't think this really makes sense for the Hawks. And then you add Pascal to the mix. Now you went from a very heavy pick and roll team with Trae Young and the ball in his hands. Trae, it was thought that he would have to learn how to play off ball with Murray coming in. And now you add Pascal Siakam, who I think he can fit into almost anything. But now you're kind of asking Trae to maybe give the ball up in certain situations because Pascal can run the break. Pascal can run a point forward sometimes. I don't think Pascal's not good off the ball, but I think his strengths are with the ball in his hands. So would you worry about Quin Snyder's ability to make that work? Because that's a lot to ask Trae to do. And Dejounte, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good – if you would have asked me this question last season and we still had Nate McMillan, I would have said hell no. It would not have worked because Nate just doesn't have the brain capacity to know how to make it work. But with Quin, that's the type of offense.
That was me as hell, bro.
That was me. My bad, my
Nate
bad.
is dumb.
Yeah, he is. To put it nicely, okay?
That's how Hawks. I've seen Hawks Twitter feel this way about it. Like I've seen a lot of like they were so happy when Nate was let go.
That was fine. Yo, that was so mean, bro. Go ahead.
Hey, that was the nicest way I could have framed it, right? But let's just say he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. And yeah, with Quin though, like Trae has gone on record, he wants to play more off ball. And we saw glimpses of it last season with the DJ running, a lot of the initiating the plays and Trae kind of running around like Steph Curry. But it wasn't consistent enough, and he wasn't doing it enough. But with a coach like Quin, I think he has the creativity and a good grasp of like what modern offenses do well in the NBA in today's game. I think it's going to help. And to be honest, we haven't had the personnel to play that type of style of basketball because our starting front court for the past 2-3 years in a row have been horrendous, right? DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, and John Collins, none of them can collectively pass the ball, dribble the ball, and really do anything. Like DeAndre Hunter is probably the best out of that bunch, in my opinion, because we've seen DeAndre go off at times, but he's just not consistent. So, fun fact: Pascal Siakam alone last season had more assists than all of DeAndre Hunter, John Collins, and Clint Capella combined. So, it helps a lot. And now that we have a player of that skill set, if we do get Pascal, I think it's going to open up the offense even more. And, it's going to allow Trae and DJ and Bogey and a lot of our shooters, AJ Griffin, to move around the perimeter and get open looks.
I love Pascal. Just to be honest, he's one of my favorite players in the league. I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league as well.
For sure.
Think the fact that he plays for the Raptors, he plays in Canada, not too many people pay attention to him.
Right.
He's fantastic. So I do think overall it would be a net gain. I just think as a Hawk fan, that would probably be my only concern, where it's like, okay, how do we make this work? Especially because the offense is not what's really needed in Atlanta, right? You guys have no problem scoring the basketball. There's plethora of ways in which the Hawks score the basketball. You have shooters, you have a playmaker in Trae, and then Dejounte can play make as well. I think the front court maybe needs a little bit of beefing up from the offensive standpoint, but you don't really need to add offense. You really need to add some type of like defensive presence, especially on the perimeter. Is there a
Pascal
player?
Siakam can do that though. He's a good defender.
Yeah, no, you're right. Is there another player out there though that maybe you can get? Who is a little under the radar? Is there anyone that you're thinking of that you would like to see on the Hawks that might be available?
I don't know really. Like a lot of the trade rumors and the trade talks have kind of died down these past couple of weeks, so I have no idea who the Hawks are even thinking about eyeing. And I don't really see a whole lot of viable options this offseason that would really improve our defense that much better. Pascal Siakam would be not only a net positive on offense, but he would also be a net positive on defense as well. Pascal's honestly our best shot. And then if we get JaVale McGee and that package back, he's obviously a really good backup center still in this league. He can provide rim protection and provide rebounding and things like that, as a backup in situational play. So, I think Pascal and JaVale are really our best bet at this point. Or maybe a Josh Green, too, from Dallas if they don't want to give up JaVale McGee or something. Yeah.
I was going to say, what are your feelings on some of the young players you guys have, like the AJ Griffins and the Jalen Johnsons?
Fire.
Okay, I know Jalen Johnson was like getting a lot of, especially from, I forget what Quin Synder said about him, but like basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but basically said he has like star potential if he like puts it together. So what are your feelings on those young players?
Yeah, so out of all the young guys, I think the three kind of, blue chip prospects that we have would be Jalen, Onyeka, and AJ Griffin, right? AJ Griffin was the only, and one of like the youngest, like top 5 youngest players ever to have a 50, 40, 90 season as a 19-year-old. So he's really poised. He can be an elite scorer, elite shooter. His defense will get better with experience and as he kind of fills out his body frame because he's still young, right? He's 20 years old. Onyeka Okongwu, obviously, we already know what Onyeka can do. We've seen in the postseason, we've seen in the regular season. But the player that I'm most excited about is Jalen Johnson, a.k.a. Mini LeBron, a.k.a. Ben Simmons if he actually had some balls, and a.k.a. just, a good player. When you look at Jalen Johnson.
As a Nets fan, I just
He's
can't get this man. Every day I gotta see something about Ben. Like
Ben Simmons caught a stray. I apologize.
Nah, but it's cool.
He's been catching strays for years, bro. He's used to
he's
it.
fine. He's
You're
good.
used to it.
Yeah.
You're used to it. But like Jalen, when you look at his body frame, right? The dude is 6'9", 6'10". He's 230 pounds. Has a fucking 38-inch vertical.
Yeah.
He can pass. He can dribble. He can play make. And he honestly, like unbiasedly, he looks like he resembles LeBron and Ben Simmons from like that aspect, right? Where he's a big dude. He can initiate the fast break, finish in transition, pass the ball, dribble the ball. His only weak side at the moment is his perimeter shooting. So like he's not the best 3-point shooter at this current point in time, but if he works on that and he comes back and he's able to hit like give me 35, 36% from three, right? I don't need to see 40% or 45.
Right.
If he can shoot anywhere from 35, 36% this season from the three, he has potential to be like a top 40 player in the league, like no BS. So he was actually working out with LeBron James 2 days ago in a private workout. And I don't know how many third-year players, are able to work out with LeBron James unless you're like a Laker or something. But that just goes to show like the type of basketball player he could be. Chris Johnson, who's like a world-renowned basketball trainer, if you guys know him, he raves about Jalen Johnson. Has been raving about him all off season. Dude's in the gym. He's been in Atlanta. He's been in LA because he's from LA. And he's just been in the gym grinding. Literally every single day I see a post of him working on his game. No days off. So I think he has the potential to really, really like up his game. And I honestly think he's going to have a good shot at Most Improved Player award this year. So yeah, I got high hopes for Jalen, man. And he's a menace on the defensive side of the ball. He can guard 1 through 5. He can block shots, poach the passing lanes, play great on-ball defense. If you guys don't believe me, just rewatch the game from this past season against the Bucks when they played Atlanta at home. And Jalen Johnson literally had Giannis in a straitjacket. So yeah, I got high hopes for Jalen.
Would you give him up for Pascal?
Ooh.
That's
Like, are you talking about like a straight up 1-for-1 trade?
No, it's not gonna be 1 for 1.
It's not going to be 1 for 1. But if it was part of the trade package, because
No.
because how you talk about him is how I've seen a lot of like other people speak about him. So teams obviously are going to want to get. You know what I mean? They want that potential. They want that player with that potential.
That's a deal breaker for me. I couldn't do it, especially because Pascal is an expiring contract. It's too risky for me. And it would absolutely kill me if I saw Jalen Johnson drop like 18, 6, and 7 in Toronto. I wouldn't be able to stand it. So, no, that's a deal breaker. I couldn't do that.
To that point, I mean, it just seems like when we talk about the Hawks, when everybody talks about the Hawks, it's always the same thing. It's like, yeah, they have players. They're good. It's just that they never really put it together. The roster always seems to have pretty much what you need, maybe not to win a championship, but to at least be competitive enough to make the Eastern Conference semis, maybe make the Eastern Conference finals like they did a couple years ago. What makes you think this year things are going to go differently?
Honestly, and it sounds a little cliche, I think coaching matters a lot, right? I think out of all the professional sports, the NBA head coach position has the most impact on the game. I think they have, when they can create game plans and manage their lineups and just call different plays and create different plays, I think that's huge for a team. And we haven't had a coach like Quin Synder, right? Like we had Lloyd Pierce, who was a first-year head coach who was, like, historically speaking, one of the losingest coaches in the history of the NBA. He's never even been interviewed for another head coaching job. He's just that bad. Nate McMillan, he's been fired at every single tenure he's ever been in.
He got you to the conference finals, though, man. He got you to the conference finals.
He did. Look, I've said this multiple times. People think I'm crazy. If any one of us in this room right now coached that team, we could have made the Eastern Conference finals. And I'll tell you why. I will tell you why. The only reason why the Hawks that year just upped their game and made the ECFs was because that was the same year they fired Lloyd Pierce. Nate McMillan took over an interim head coach job.
Right.
And this is how much the players dislike Lloyd Pierce, is they were willing to play 125% just to prove a case. Lloyd Pierce, no, dead ass. Lloyd Pierce would go on record, and he actually told the NBA voters not to vote Trae Young in the All-Star game that year.
Oh, my God.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yes,
know
he
that.
was advocating for Trae Young not to make the All-Star game because he just didn't like him and he didn't think he was good enough and yada, yada, yada.
So
So with that,
it was a revenge conference finals.
it was a revenge run. I'm telling you, they caught lightning in a bottle. It was
Okay.
a revenge type of run just to make a point in case to Lloyd Pierce, and it happened. But yeah, and Nate, that was the farthest he's ever gone in his coaching career. He's been fired. He's never made it past the first round in Indiana. Never made it past the first round in Portland. He's not a good coach. So I think with a more creative, a smarter-minded coach like Quin Synder, I think that's going to unlock some real good things for this team.
All right, and then finally, I know it's early, so it's a little bit unfair for me to do this, but I'll give you 2 opportunities. So one prediction, if the team was to stay as is, what do you think, if you were to be objective, what would your prediction be for the season? And then I'll give you an out. If they were to get Pascal Siakam on a team-friendly deal, a prediction for that as well.
If the team currently stands with no Pascal Siakam, I think this team still could be a 50-win team. Okay. I think I could see us be like 50-32 with the talent that we have, with the new coach that we're going to have. So I think 50-32 is possible. With Pascal Siakam, I could see us getting like another, 5 to 10 wins with Pascal and being a top 3 seed in the East. I think a package would be like Kobe Buffkin, our future first-round pick, plus DeAndre Hunter and whatever they get back from Dallas. And in terms of his extension, a good deal would be probably like a 2 to 3 year deal at like $30 million, $30 million a year. I think that's fair.
Okay. All right. Well, Alex, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you coming on, previewing the Atlanta Hawks. Again, I don't think we're rivals as the fans. Y'all beat us in the playoffs. It happened one time. You got the better of us. I think for a rivalry to be formed, there needs to be some type of back and forth. We haven't had that yet. But either way, Knicks fans hate Hawks fans for some reason, or the Hawks right now. But I like you. You're a good dude. So you're welcome anytime. You can follow Alex at Hawks Fan TV. You can check out his content as well. I'm Josh Rodriguez at Josh_Rodriguez_. He's Quab at Quab AKS. You can follow The Dime at The Dime NBA. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll be back with another team preview on the next episode of The Dime.